Hey, everybody, Tom Gentile here. Welcome to the Profit Strategies Podcast. Last week in April 2024. Where is the time going? Uh, Time is going like it is all the time. It seems to slip away. It seems to slip away more the older I get. I want to talk about bankruptcy this week, and I want to talk about how it ties together with patterns because this is a show about patterns. This is a podcast about patterns. You don't have to see me. I want you to think about this. All right, think about this. And so, I mean, how in the world did I come up with bankruptcies this week? Well, part of it's because I saw some stuff on television. But here's the real thing that started me thinking about, hey, this is a great podcast for me to talk to anyone who listens to me. It started with an expedition vehicle last week. So let me take you on a little story, take you down a road here. All right. The road less traveled. Back in 2021, after COVID, we didn't want to get on airplanes to fly back and forth. We had our summer home in New York, and we didn't want to get on planes. So I went out and I bought what was it? It was a Mercedes Sprinter van. I should have stuck with that because that thing was nice. And so it was open. It was nice. I think the only thing I didn't like about it is it had bench seats in the back, which were also beds, which was great. But the problem is when you were sitting on these things, you were looking across with each other instead of looking ahead. And everybody wanted to turn their neck to see where we were going. And so by the time you got where you were going, you had your neck was hurting. Anyway, so I also didn't like the fact that these Sprinter vans are nothing more than a tin can on wheels. And I say that because they weren't designed to put all this camping gear inside. It stresses out the suspension. It basically stresses out the entire bottom of the van. Anyway, I decided I needed something bigger. I wanted something better. I wanted something that could go off road if I needed it. I wanted something that had solar power capable of running air conditioning and equipment and things like that for even several days. So I decided to get an expedition vehicle. So I went out and bought an expedition vehicle in 2021. And I also wanted this so that I could do my work from it if I needed to. And fast forward to the Tom's Trading Room mobile trader. This thing wasn't cheap, by the way. And I took delivery. And here's the thing. I took delivery in 2021. And so anyway, where I'm going with this is that I actually put it together, I think, in late 2020. And so I got the 2020 prices. And by the time I took delivery, the new ones, they were selling new ones. They were being sold for 40% more. And that was the base model. And me, yeah, I go all in. I get all the options. I mean, when it comes to something, I want it in there in case I need it. And honestly, I probably don't use most of the stuff that's on options, but I want it there just in case. Go big or go home. Anyway, I'm going off the path here. Like I said, I got this thing so my wife and I and the family could travel. Turned out, it turned out she didn't like camping. We went camping in it, and it was nice for just the two of us. I mean, these things are made. I mean, it was 20, 25 feet long, but it wasn't that wide, and it wasn't that tall, and it had a whole bunch of stuff crammed in it. I got to tell you, that Sprinter van had more room. It actually felt bigger inside. And so anyway, turned out she didn't like camping. So last year I decided to sell it. And so, I don't like things sitting around. An asset that sits is a wasting asset. So I sent it back to the company because they had a resale program. And I figure, with something like this, I definitely, even paying them a percentage to sell it is much better than me trying to put this thing on eBay or in RV Trader or whatever. Anyway, oh my God, what a bad decision I made because it sat on their lot. They did not advertise it. We did have two people that came and actually put money down to buy it. But these dummies took refundable deposits. So once these people, had some time on their hands, they decided, nah, you know what? I want something else. Anyway, I sold this thing twice. And then of course it didn't close. So fast forward to last week. So this has been a year now. And of course, my mind's in all kind of other things. So, I wasn't actively watching this. And so I get a message from the new CEO of the company. I'm thinking, new CEO. I'm going to read it to you real quick. I'm writing this because we've been working through the business restructuring and have decided to make changes to the consignment program. We're no longer selling consignment vehicles. And I'd like to coordinate returning your truck back to you. Could you please advise how to handle a return? Blah, 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 blah. Thanks for your understanding. Now, I replied emotionally, not acceptable, Mr. New CEO. Turned out to be a Mrs. I bought this vehicle on the premise if it didn't meet my needs, I could resell it to your company. Your company's had my vehicle since July of 2023, and it's cost me time and money to get it there. I threw a bunch of other stuff in there. Anyway, I get a call back from the CEO, and I thought, okay, this is good. They've heard me, and they're gonna take care of me. Nope. Basically said, listen, you need to take your vehicle back. It's in your best interest to get it out of this building. All right. That's all I had to hear. And I'm reading between the lines. I'm like, this company's shutting down. So that's my first look into bankruptcies personally hitting me. So what's going on this week? I'll tell you what's going on this week. I mean, you can look at, there's a lot of bankruptcies happening, folks. I'm just going to tell you the two that hit my radar and probably yours. Express Stores is filing for bankruptcy. Okay. Express Stores. I mean, that's the place in the mall that sells cheap clothing. I have sports jackets. I have a couple sports jackets from Express Stores. Those one and dones. You have to wear it somewhere and then you never wear it again. That's what I got. Oh boy. See, Express is now it also says some are saying taking a detour. But here's another one that was a big one. Did you hear that Red Lobster is considering filing for bankruptcy? Red Lobster. You know what killed Red Lobster? That all-you-can-eat shrimp. The poor man's lobster. And I always thought Red Lobster was the place to get the poor man's lobster. In fact, I can't remember last time I was in a Red Lobster. It was decades ago. But I do remember what I felt like coming out of a Red Lobster. I felt like I needed to get to a bathroom as soon as possible because it was pink lobster that was being sold to me. That I was eating something. I'm like, is this cooked? Is this cooked all the way through? So I thought it was substandard. I mean, you're going to go to a lobster place. You go to a place that's not a chain restaurant. You go into a higher end, or you go to an actual place that's what they serve. There's a place down here in Florida that does lobster hoagies. And they have this one called the Maniac, Maine lobster, Maniac. And I don't know how many pounds of lobster that they put. I think it's a pound. I'm exaggerating. But I'm telling you, there's more lobster than there is hoagie roll. And this stuff's literally falling off the roll. And I can't eat the whole thing. In fact, when I look at it, I go, this is me. And I know there's a lot of you out there that do this too. When you order something really nice and it comes with a bunch of sides, you look at the plate and you say, I can't eat all this. What's the most expensive thing on this plate? Because that's what's going down my mouth. And with the Maniac, I'm like, I'm eating this lobster. So I'm either forking it because I'm not putting the 50-cent hoagie down in my stomach when there's lobster that needs to be consumed first. So I'm eating the lobster and I'm forking it. Or if I don't have a fork, I'm just dumping the thing down my mouth like it's a drink, or I'm using my tongue to get to that lobster meat. Oh, Red Lobster. God, the memories of finding the men's room as quick as possible. I mean, seriously though, folks, um, there are for 2024 7,000. This is just the first quarter of this year. Over 7,000 filings. All right, of commercial companies filing for bankruptcy versus 5,800 last year. I mean, that's a 22% increase. That's pretty big. That's pretty big. I mean, what's the pattern? I'll tell you what the pattern is. I mean, with Red Lobster, they just made the choice that they've got competition, and they figured out that what are we going to do to get the let's do all you can eat shrimp, and that backfired on them because I mean, when you do all you can eat shrimp, you got people that are hungry going in. They're basically consuming all of your cheap product, and they're not eating anything else. The pattern with the other 7,112 filings, not counting Red Lobster, same as before. I mean, you're coming out of COVID. I know COVID is now 3 to 4 years in the rearview mirror, but it's still around. But here's the thing. COVID had all this money. All this money got flushed in to the economy in 2021. And it all got spent in 2021 and 2022. We saw the market drop in 2022 as interest rates went up. We had an interest rate peaking in 2023 as the market rebounded. And even though the markets have rebounded, there's a lot that has not in the economy. And so it's weird because you see the markets rebounding, but then you see the economy. And everyone that's listening to my podcast probably knows somebody that lost their job. A lot of folks are losing jobs now, which is weird because when you look at, what the government's telling us, the economy is booming. Yeah, you know what? It's booming because people have to work more than one job to pay bills. And so, when you're working more than one job, you are taking jobs out of the economy that could be for someone else. And then there are certain sectors that are getting soft. The one down here in Florida that I see getting soft is a big one: construction. We're starting to see more houses that are staying on the markets. And these are the $1 million. I'm not talking about $10 million, $20 million mansions. I'm talking about the $1 million home, which is the average in a gated community that people are going and buying, and these are sitting now. And so we're seeing a lot of houses sitting on the market, a lot of the economy getting soft. Is it going to translate into Mickey Mouse and the tourism? I don't know. Maybe not yet. But these bankruptcies, you got great ideas that start, but then comes the greed, then comes the leverage, and that's something you can never mix together. So what's this got to do with the overall markets? That's really where we want to go here. And so I started looking at the 2020s, and then I thought, let me go back and look at 1920 to 1930. And 1920, and if you look at 1920, 21, 22, 1920, the market started out, and this is the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It's the only thing we can look at back then. But you had a Dow Jones Industrial Average that dropped. That was a double-digit drop between 1920 and about 1922. Then it popped up again in 23 and 24. And by the end of 2024, we were at new highs. We were probably up about double digits. But here's the thing. When you look at this, the 20 to 24 markets were slightly higher. But I urge you all to go and Google historic charts. Because if you take a look at 1925 to 1929, the market nearly tripled during that time. And it wasn't until the crash that we saw substantial pullbacks. And the pullbacks during the market crash, and I'm spitballing these to you. I'm not giving you actuals. But we saw the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which was somewhere around 375 in 1929, drop down to 50, to about 50. And that didn't happen in one day. We saw 375 become 200 very, very quickly with the 29 crash. But then there was a rebound. And the rebound took us from just above 200 to just below 300 before 1931, 1932, 1933. And that was the big move to the downside. All right, that took us down to 50. Do you know that the highs that occurred in 1929 were not eclipsed until the mid 50s? When you look at high watermark is what that's called, that high before the crash, and then we start going back up again. It took 25 years after that 29 top to see that 29 top again. It was in the mid 50s before that happened. Now, I wasn't around then. In fact, it was 1965 before I was even born. So I go back and I look at, well, what was something like that? What happened in my lifetime that was something like that? It was the top in 1999, the dot-com bubble. And we saw that 1999-2000 high, that big drop that happened in technology. They call that the lost decade. And it was. I mean, again, go back and look at history. Look at what happened in 1999 and 2000, those highs that happened with dot-com stocks. And then go take a look what happened afterwards. It was 2016 before the NASDAQ saw those highs. That was more than 16 years, folks. What am I trying to tell you here? The market can remain, you ever heard this? The market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. What that means is that we see bankruptcies and unemployment ticking up, and yet the economy, there's mixed signals, and we see sales of things like homes starting to cool off. But you know what else is going to happen? There are going to be rate cuts. Rate cuts are going to come. They're going to have to happen. The debt level is too high to have these kind of interest rates continue to pile on interest on top of interest and on top of debt. So these cuts are going to come. And I also believe cheap money is going to come as well. And it could come sometime later this year. It could come with a potentially new administration, a new Congress, maybe a new president, maybe not. But if history repeats itself, the big crash the big long term is still yet to come. I mean, you had that 1929 Wall Street crash. Okay, we didn't see new highs until the mid 50s, and then of course, we saw 62. That was the Kennedy slide. That's what they called that, the Kennedy slide. We saw the market just persistently dull in the 70s. All right, with high interest rates. Then we saw the market resurgence again during the Reagan administration. You go into 1987, and then that's when Black Monday happened. And that was followed by the mini crash in 89, the recessions in 1990. Remember when house prices were real high? I mean, Japan really took us down then. The dot-com bubble was what I was talking about. And, then we had the financial crisis in 2008. We had that flash crash that occurred in 2010. But, the one that most of us all think about is, oh, what about COVID? What about COVID? 2020, we saw that big drop down. Yeah, but that came back pretty quick too. But the last time we saw anything that happened for more than a decade, you got to go back to the dot-com bubble of 2000. So you have 1929, you have Black Monday, you have dot-com bubble. Okay, those were some big ones. So what's 2020 look like? Well, I went back and I look at 1920, and I see that big rip-roaring down move that took us from 375 down to 50. That took 3 years. Okay. Have we seen a 3-year move to the downside? No, we haven't seen a 3-year move to the downside in quite some time. Is it coming? Perhaps. I don't by any means want to, appear to be this fear monger. What I want you to do is I want you to think about this stuff. And I want you to think about, for most of us, you got to think back to 1999 and 2000. All right. The market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. What's likely to do it this time? Because, if you go back and you see, well, in 29, it was banks and it was thousands of companies out there, all trying to do the same thing. Automobile companies, telephone companies, electricity companies. And what ended up happening? You had a few that survived and most of them failed. Look at 2000, the dot-com bubble. Everybody was a dot-com back then. A few of them survived, most of them failed. Okay. You look at social media and the same thing. Social media is not on as big of a, isn't as big, but there's that whole, what is it called? The gig economy, where you got all these people that work from home that decided they were going to be YouTube sensations. And what happened with YouTube? The best money that came out of YouTube to a content creator was in the year 2020. After that, that money's dried up for the most part. And now it can't be that you just have 1,000 subscribers. Now you've got to have certain hours of content. You have to have a certain amount of watchers. YouTube's put so many restrictions on that, guess what? They're killing the little guy. And the big ones are surviving. The big ones are going to take the money. What do I think is going to happen for the next that big resurgence that could become a bubble? Could it become AI? Possibly. Could it become crypto? Possibly. Could it become a combination of both? Yeah, but I still think AI is in its infancy, and here's why, folks. When I take a look at the number of stocks, and I'm talking about stocks that are optionable, the big guys. When I take a look at the number of stocks out there, number of companies out there on the exchange that are crypto companies, you can count the number of these on a couple of hands. It's not that many. Okay. So I believe that we've got a few years, and I believe everybody's going to morph into some kind of AI company. And there's going to be AI companies coming out of the woodworks, regardless or not if they even do anything with AI. They're going to put AI into their white papers, and what's going to happen? Mainstream media is going to promote them, and then neophytes are going to buy them because that's going to be the next big thing. I still think we haven't seen the kind of moves in the market that are likely to be seen. And I'm not talking about today, and I'm not talking about tomorrow. I'm talking about years. And again, no guarantees, but if history repeats itself, I expect that the next 5 years are going to be absolutely crazy compared to the last 5. And so get ready, because I think we're going to see something incredible. But I also think, what is going to come after that? What's going to come? Because, you can only kick the can of cheap money. You can only kick the can of leverage and greed down the road for so long before that can gets too big to kick. Now, why am I saying all this? I mean, you guys all look at me as a trader, which I am, but I'm also a long-term guy as well. I'm a long-term balanced guy. I turned 59 years old this year. I can't even believe it's coming out of my mouth, that number. But I say that because, again, I don't trade like I did in my 20s. I don't leverage like I did in my 20s. I don't have Teflon and time on my side like I did in my 20s. I got a son who's a finance guy. He already says I'm overweighted in our family portfolio. And I think part of that's because of Bitcoin and Ethereum. But why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this for one thing and one thing only. Whatever you see coming at you, and I'm going to give you the patterns. We're going to talk about patterns, patterns, patterns. But whatever we see coming, don't throw everything in one basket. The more you divest, the more you protect yourself from bankruptcy, the more you protect your account from going to zero. Okay? So there you go. Hey, last thing, I just got a letter from Berkshire Hathaway, and in it are my shareholder passes for next weekend to the Berkshire Hathaway 2024 shareholders meeting. And here's the guide. What do we got going on? Wow. This is becoming more and more the go-to event because, the leader, Warren Buffett, who's at the helm of this, he's not getting any younger either. And so I think this is really going to be the ticket for the next couple of years, because we may never get a chance to see this guy in person very soon. I hope he lives to 120. But drinking all that Diet Coke and eating all that McDonald's, I mean, he and sees candy and all that stuff that he's invested in, I don't know. I mean, I had a grandmother that lived to 99, and she ate pork rinds. So that could happen. Anyway, am I going? Tell you what, I'll let you know sometime next week. Folks, I am signing off for today. Have a great rest of your week and weekend, and I'll see you again next week. Bye, everyone.